What's the real cost of inkjet printing? We're going to find out today. Hey everyone, welcome to Keep Shooting Monday number 119. My name is Greg Cazillo from Cazillo.com. Coming up on the show, I have a bunch of Cazillion questions, and I'm going to be going over all of the true costs of inkjet printing, what the paper costs, what the ink costs, what the printers themselves cost, and actually assisted by an article from Red River Paper. And so this is really going to help to open everyone's eyes to the true cost. Everybody seems to think that inkjet is super expensive, when in actuality it saves you a ton of money versus print costs when you order them, order those prints online from somewhere else. So I'm going to be going over those today. First thing I wanted to talk about though was Lightroom 6.4 updates. I'm still working with that big, huge catalog. I have had actually less and less issues with it. It's gotten a little bit better, or maybe I've gotten used to it. I don't know. Anyway, with 6.4, I noticed that it's definitely opening probably about 50% faster. When I'm scrolling in the grid view, is definitely a faster preview when it's actually displaying those previews with the newer version. So that makes me very happy. It makes it a little bit easier to bear with those 180,000 images or whatever there is in that catalog. There's also a new feature called boundary warp when you're creating a panoramic. What that does is it stretches the image to the very edges so that you don't need to crop it and lose a little bit, probably 5–10% of the image. So that's a nice feature. Here's a before and an after. You can see how the doorway there is a little bit on an angle, but I'm sure that my camera was probably tilted down a little bit. That's why you have that little edge. And you can also see up on the other side, on the opposite side, the ceiling there isn't quite straight, and so it's not perfect. But an image without straight lines, like an outdoor photo, something like that, any kind of a scenic kind of an image, it's gonna be a really awesome option, and it's gonna work out great. So I highly suggest you check it out and see if it is something that's gonna work out for you. There's different degrees, and you can control the amount that you're actually pushing it to the edge. It's using a combination of the content-aware fill as well as the panoramic settings in order to do that. You can do it both in Adobe Camera Raw and also in Lightroom, so it's a really cool new option. A couple other things that have finally happened. Nikon finally fixed their tethering with El Capitan on the Mac, and so you can finally tether in Lightroom, and some of the other apps like Software Build, Capture One Pro, and Nikon Capture will finally work on the Mac running El Capitan, which we kind of understand now because they wanted to wait until the new cameras came out, till the the D5 and D500 were released in order to release the software. But I still think that there's no excuse for waiting, what's it been, 5 months, 6 months after the final version of the software to come out to fix that. I just think that's really poor marketing, poor planning, and there's no reason why that shouldn't have been fixed during the beta phase, back in September, maybe even August. This should have been fixed. And then 6 months later, you release another update for the new cameras. I shame on Nikon, in my opinion, on that. So let's get into the nitty-gritty here. Let's talk about a couple things that I've seen around the web lately is should I buy sheet or roll paper? What's the best paper size to buy? And is it worth buying a printer in the long run? Where is that point where it would pay off in order to buy it? Well, first thing I did is I started running some numbers on different sizes of paper and the cost per square inch for that actual paper. So I started off with different count sheets. Now, Epson does not release, does not have like glossy paper, or I'm sorry, luster paper in 4x6 or 5x7. They also don't have different counts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with just the luster numbers, but the glossy and the matte paper I'll put up on the website so that you can see those numbers too. I ran the calculations, and so you'll be able to see all the numbers. But I'm just going to concentrate on luster since it's the least expensive and it's the most popular paper. So 50 sheets of 8.5 by 11 paper is $32, and that is 0.007 cents per square inch. 13 by 19 sheet is 0.0063 cents for 50 sheets per square inch. If we get down to this roll, which is a 24-inch by 100-foot roll, we're down to 0.003 cents per square inch, and that's about the cheapest that I was able to find. So it worked. That's kind of where I based all of my other numbers off of, is that roll of paper. Now, what you can do with that roll is you can cut it down to any size. So you invest in a decent cutter. Highly recommend the Dolly cutters. Invest in one of those, cut them down to 4x6 sheets. You can run them through any machine, and it's going to be, and like the new P400, P600, P800, any of those machines, you're going to be able to run those individual sheets, run them borderless, and it's going to work out. And you're going to have a nice borderless image without having to cut them afterwards, which is actually a great feature. I didn't ever realize how nice that was until I started doing it and I tried it. And it is a much nicer, a much more accurate way to print those photos, to have those sheets already cut, and then to do it. You're still saving the money on the paper by not buying the individual 4x6 cut pieces and cutting it yourself, but then you end up saving the time in the back end in order to get those cuts. So, cut as individual pieces. So that's a really nice way to go. Glossy was a little bit cheaper, actually, for the 24 by 100 roll, 0.0028 versus 0.003 cents. No big deal. Matte even cheaper again, 0.0019 cents. So that makes it really, really inexpensive if you love a matte paper. Although, as our friends from Red River Paper told us, the ink format is actually a little bit more expensive. What they did is they ran some costs on an Epson 3800 printer or a 3880 printer. For a 4x6 print, we're talking about 15.15 cents per print, and the paper is 0.0072 for a total cost for a 4x6 print of 16 cents. For a 5x7, 0.22 plus the paper, 0.0075, which is 23 cents. Total for an 8x10 print, which is going to be something that you're going to do quite often. Again, these are all luster numbers. 52 cents. For an 11x14, $1.42. 13x19, $2.27. And for a 16x20 print, we're talking $2.84 just for the ink and the paper at the least cost for the two of them. That is dirt cheap. $2.84 for a 16x20 print that you're probably going to end up charging $75, $100, $200 for, depending upon your market and what you're actually going to be selling it for, what you're doing with it. Obviously, you're going to have different prices if someone just comes in for reprints of their own images, which I offer and other photographers that I know offer, versus if you were selling it of your own print, your own images. So there's a sliding scale there. Now, what I wanted to compare that to is some of the popular labs. One of the most popular labs out there is Mpix.com. Great company, owned by Miller's Professional Imaging. If you are a pro, you can get one of their professional accounts, which will save you a lot of money again, especially on shipping. But just go by the regular retail cost of their prints. So at Mpix, for 150, well, let me back up. One of the 10-inch rolls, just like this, okay, one of the 10-inch rolls by 100 feet, you can get 150 8x10 prints on that roll. All right. So that's kind of how I'm running the numbers here, and it'll be 75 16x20 prints. So 150 8x10 prints at Mpix would be $343. 75 16x20 prints, which would be $1,529. So the cost of that, if we subtract everything out and figure it all out, and actually do 11x14s also. 11x14s would be $374. The savings by inkjet would be $303 for 11x14s if you printed 50 of them. It would be $265 if you ordered 150 8x10s, and it would be $1,316 savings if you ordered 75 16x20s by printing them yourself with an Epson printer versus having them done at a service like Mpix. Now, you compare that to a P600 printer, which is $849. Basically, if you bought the printer, which is $849 plus $142 for the ink and paper costs, that's $991 compared to $748 for 100 11x14 prints from Mpix. So you're talking, you know, $200 more, $230 more. That's a pretty good savings there. You know, basically then if you resell the printer, the resale on these printers after about 2 years, 3 years is still pretty high, usually about 50%. So it's totally worth doing it there. If you printed 75 16x20 prints on a P800 printer, you're talking $1,408 total for the printer and the paper and the ink, compared to $1,529 for those same 75 prints from Mpix. So you're actually spending less money. You end up spending, what, $120 less for those 75 16x20 prints. Now, to be fair, there's no shipping costs in there for the prints. That's going to cost you a lot of money. So Mpix 3-day service is $395 per package for 3 to 6 day service. For 2 to 5 day service, it's $7.95 per package. That means that when you upload a photo, you're going to wait anywhere from 2 to 6 days for your prints and spend anywhere from $4 to $8 for that print to be shipped to you. So it does not make sense to order one print at a time. You're better off buying your own printer, having it in-house, be able to get it done out of the way, and have a great quality print out the door, and it's printed and done in 10 minutes, if that. And it's right out of Lightroom or right out of Photoshop or right out of whatever application that you're using. Some downsides of using the printers. Number one, all these ink costs are going to depend on the coverage of that image. Some images are going to have more ink coverage. Some of them are going to have less. If they're brighter, they're whiter. So you do need to think about that. You might have a 20-30% overrun depending upon the coverage of that image. Another thing is your waste ink and waste paper. You're going to probably have at least 10% waste ink, 10% waste paper. So that's something you got to factor in and think about. And of course, you need to spend about $150, $130 on a decent paper cutter, which, like I said earlier, I highly recommend one of the dolly cutters. Great thing is, paper, ink, and printer all ship free from either Amazon or a place like itsupplies.com. When you order from IT Supplies, you can get your paper and ink shipped for free if you spend over $100, and I usually have it within about 2 days. There is nowhere else on the web that I have found with a better deal once you factor in that cost of shipping. So, you order 2 cartridges at a time. It's over $100 for those 2 cartridges, and you get you save $8, $10 on shipping. Great deal. They're here in the United States, so it works out well. Is it worth it? In my mind, absolutely it's worth it. You have that instant gratification. You can turn your prints around quicker to your clients. You have greater control over your prints with a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of research, and a little bit of setup. you can get some really awesome product. And then you also have the flexibility of not only doing those luster prints, you can do your own canvas prints. Run those numbers, see if it's worth it to you. I strongly suggest taking another look at it. It is totally worth it in my mind, and I will never be going back, knock on wood. I love it so much. Just with all the options and the fun and that instant gratification, be able to get that print out of that. You know, it's better than having a darkroom back in the day. I always wanted my own darkroom. Now I have it, but it's a digital way of doing it versus the you know, the analog way, I guess you could say, of doing it. So strongly suggest checking it out, and I'll put this table of information that I have here, all these numbers, up on the website so you can take a look at it and figure it out for yourself. Freeman Slim asks, what backdrop is that? That is actually a custom-made background. It is not a commercial one that you can purchase, unfortunately. Hopefully one day I can get into actually shooting a video of how to make your own and paint your own. It is not difficult to make your own and to basically go out and get some different shades and colors of paint. And the hardest part is usually finding the big enough piece of canvas in order to paint on with no seams or anything like that. So I'm going to hopefully work on one of those over the summer, but that is a custom background. Best I can say is start browsing some of the bigger companies like Denny or some of the other companies that are out there with their backgrounds, whether it's a muslin or whether it's an actual canvas one that you're going to use, and figure out exactly what you want and paint your own. Why does increasing the shutter speed decrease the flash power? Zuni had 3 great questions this week. This first one is referring to this photo, and basically he noticed that when I'm increasing the shutter speed, it seems to decrease the flash power. What's actually happening is that actually is not the case. What's happening is when you increase your shutter speed, you're increasing the difference in between the ambient light, or the ratio in between the ambient light and your flash. And so when you do that, you end up with deeper shadows. Then when you decrease your shutter speed, you add more ambient light, and so then you're able to have a smaller ratio. So basically what's happening there is you can control how that image looks playing with your shutter speed. That's the cool thing about flash, is that you can control it, set it up however you want it to look. That's the way that it's going to work. So strongly suggest playing with the flash, getting out there, just doing some tests and figure it out and understand it so that it just clicks in your head every time. Does this mean spot or partial metering on the highlights, or using aperture plus exposure compensation? Zuni was referring to this video where I talked about how you want to expose for the highlights and then print for your shadows. Exposing for the highlights means that you want to make sure that you're not overexposing your image, clipping too many of your highlights so that you cannot recover them. The best way to meter that I have found over my close to 20 years of experience is to use just a basic matrix metering. I talked about it in this video in the Photo Academy series, so go through that video, see if it will help you. The bottom line there is use matrix metering probably 95% of the time, only if you really needed to use exposure compensation or spot metering, or if you really know what you're doing, because it can throw your exposures off, especially if you're shooting quickly and you're not paying attention. So check out that video. Hopefully it will help a little bit as far as your metering is concerned. How did you get everyone in focus with 2.8? Zuni was referring to this photo in this video that I did probably about 2 years ago, and basically different lenses have different depths of field. So since I was zoomed out at probably a 24mm zoom position with this lens, and I was at a decent distance, and I focused at basically infinity with this lens, that made everything in focus. Now, if I had my 70-200 lens at its 70 point shooting at 2.8, that'd be a different story. But the bottom line there is that different lenses have different depths of field. So try out different lenses, see what they do, see how they react at different apertures. The best thing I can say there is try out your own equipment and understand what your own lenses and your own camera do and how they act and what the results are. And then you'll start to understand anyway, the different capabilities of the equipment that you have. You know, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. You know, be proud of the equipment that you have. Work with the equipment that you have, push it to its own limits, and then when you see the limits of the equipment that you have, then it's time to start upgrading. But if you can't push the equipment that you have right now to its limits, then you're not gonna, you know, upgrading to another lens or another camera or another whatever is not going to improve your photography. So try out your different lenses. You know, a 24mm lens is going to have a much wider depth of field versus a 70 to 200 or an 85-1.4 or a 200mm f2 or something like that, or a 300 2.8. You know, they're going to have much smaller depths of field the longer the lens goes. So hopefully that explains it, and please try out your own equipment and understand it. So thank you, Zuni, yeah, thank you, Zuni, for those questions today. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you understand a little bit more. I will gladly answer any more questions in the weeks to come, so keep them rolling. I think that is it for Keep Shooting Monday number 119. If I made any mistakes in today's show with the calculations, please let me know. I'll gladly update that. But as far as I can tell, I think it's pretty darn accurate, and I totally 100% recommend buying yourself an Epson printer in order to print your photographs. Thanks, guys. Keep shooting.